every time you sell your product on a non-recommended retail price basis, accept that you failed. Don't celebrate revenues that came in at 30% off because you've got a world of pain coming as a result of that, right? You probably aren't that profitable. You've commoditized your brand. You've pissed off all the customers that paid full price. You've pulled forward all of this demand that you now won't have in the next sector. And all the other distributors are now going to line up and say, right, well, that was great. It's my turn next. So it's in the litany of bad business decisions. Running a price-based promotion, if you don't have to, is probably the most idiotic thing you could ever do.
Hi, I'm Nick Haig, and welcome to the World's Greatest Business Thinkers podcast. I don't think anyone has more marketing knowledge than Mark Ritson. He's spent the last 25 years working as a marketing professor. In the past, he's been an assistant professor at London Business School, an associate professor at Melbourne Business School, and visiting professor at MIT. He's also worked as a global brand consultant for clients that include Loewe, McKinsey, Johnson & Johnson, and De Beers, and was an in-house brand consultant in Paris for LVMH. He's won numerous awards and has been a columnist for 20 years, writing a weekly column for Marketing, then Marketing Week, and now Adweek and The Drum. These days, you can find him teaching his mini MBA courses on marketing and brand management from his base in Tasmania, where he resides with 3 Tasmanians plus many idiot rescue dogs, often in his underpants, drinking wine. His words, not mine. I know you're going to love this podcast. There's lots of amazing guests coming up as well, so please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and you'll never miss another episode. Welcome to the World's Greatest Business Thinkers podcast, Mark.
Good to see you, mate. How are you?
Well, I'm very good. It's been a while. It's since
How long
I last
was
spoke.
it? I was trying to work it out. It must be 3 years. Have I got that right?
It is about 3 years because times have changed for me. I left the agency I was running, global research studies are now a thing of the past, and now I'm stuck in between these 4 walls, running a podcast, but speaking to the world's greatest business thinkers, which I definitely count you as one of those. So lucky to have you here.
I wouldn't, but then you told me you were name dropping that Gary Hamel's on next. So I question my own presence here, but the title of your podcast is well earned. If you're getting the likes of Mr. Hamel in, then it's the real deal, right?
It is. In fact, Gary's busy and he's had to push it now to January. So, but he is still upcoming.
I take it all back. It's not the real deal.
Well, I mean, we're just. I suppose we're lucky. I know we're speaking, and you're there, based in Sydney, in Manly. I'm just lucky that you're not sat in your underpants, I suppose, which you do say you often are on your LinkedIn profile drinking wine.
How do you know I'm not sat in my underpants? I'm in a bedroom.
Very true. But
you might be lucky to even get underpants out of me at 8 o'clock at night, mate. I'm telling you, trousers optional.
We're 2 northern blokes, so if I was sat in Sydney right now, I'd probably be doing the same.
We'd let it all.
I think most people know who you are, Mark, but maybe not know of your early years and what drew you to marketing. So what I'm interested in starting off in understanding was there a pivotal moment that attracted you to marketing as a discipline?
No, it's really disappointingly source origin. I've always been into it. So I was the guy that did his A-levels and went to do a degree in marketing in the 80s, you know what I mean? When it wasn't really that common, I went to Lancaster because it was the biggest, first, best marketing department in the UK. I had no interest in going to Oxford or Cambridge. I was off. All I wanted to do was get 2 B's and a C and get to Lancaster and this was, obviously at 17. So I can't explain it. I've always been into it and never lost interest in it. You know what I mean? So most marketers have that moment where and that's when I realized I loved marketing. Yeah. It's so far and so deep with me. I can't analyze it,
It's ingrained.
It is.
Did you have a mentor back in those early days?
No. I mean, my PhD supervisor, Richard Elliott, was super important to me because obviously he sort of clutched me out of the undergraduate world and got me into a PhD, and he was brilliant. But I'm very much, for good and for bad. I remember Spike Milligan doing this thing where when he was pretty much close to retiring and deaf, he gave this great speech where he said, I want to thank nobody because I did it all by myself, you know, and it's not quite that bad. But no, there weren't really any mentors. It was more me being a prick really from the outset.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose as mentors, I rode on the coattails of my father. He was a career market researcher and entrepreneur, so we set up our agency on that. But from a marketing perspective, I do need to say that I've probably learnt more from following you, reading
It's
your
fantastic.
articles, and I did attend your marketing MBA course. So I need to
You did, and you were a fine student too. I seem to remember you doing quite well. So yeah, I'm honoured, mate. I'm honoured. So I'm really your mentor. That's what we're saying here, isn't it? That's how it works here.
Well, I think you're everyone's mentor here, Mark, and we'll
I bet
touch
you
on the
say that.
point.
I bet you're fucking saying that to Gary Hamill in January as well. I bet you say, "Oh yes, yes, yes."
Well, I've never been on his course, so there you go. You've got
There
one-upmanship
you
on
go. There you go.
that. uh, d- so, in terms of branding, was that when you started looking at marketing? Did you always be, navigate towards branding, or was there another area of
No,
marketing that intrigued you?
no, that's an interesting point. I mean, like I think most people, it was advertising that sucked me in to begin with, and when I finished my degree, I ended up getting a scholarship to go off to Wharton in the States. But if it hadn't happened, I would have ended up at one of the big ad agencies. I got a couple of jobs. I think it was at DDB and another one at what was then Dave Trott's agency, GGT. And it was advertising I was into. And it was only when I finished the PhD and started being a junior professor in the States that the penny dropped that advertising was kind of the tip of the spear, but it wasn't
Yeah,
really the spear itself. And it was also kind of when you taught it, and as I started to work in it more in practice, it was kind of like, oh, hang on, there's a deeper ocean underneath, you know? And so I can remember absolutely explicitly 1999 coming back to London and being switching to being a assistant professor at London Business School and coming back to the UK and going, right, I'm a branding professor. That's the switch I'm going to make. From my early years of being a professor in the US, I was an advertising professor.
right.
When I got to London, I was like, I want to bring in the brand management class to LBS. And so that was probably the first strategic thing I ever did was making the call that it was going to be brand for me. And I remember that being very explicit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my focus initially from a professional background, I suppose I got drawn to customer loyalty and customer experience. But it was 15 years ago. A certain Byron Sharp's book landed on my desk, How Brands Grow, and since then I've been obsessed with branding too. So that was like the cataclysmic event that made me look at the market totally different as well. And actually, it was quite a pivotal point in my previous agency's history because since then my the growth trajectory of following not being too targeted, going for more mass
Yeah.
marketing, it really did mean that the growth of the brand really took off. So I need to thank Byron for his work there, and especially around branding.
Yeah, and it's an important 15 years, right, between how brands grow, getting published, and then long and short. So yeah, it's been an important 15 years for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, leaning on that, then, if I think back to when I started my agency in '98, I'd like to think that things are progressing in the marketing world. But what's your take on the current state of marketing and branding? How's the role of marketer changed since you entered the field? And do you feel like are people not obsessing the same over just advertising and promotion now and looking at the
No,
broader?
no, I think it's slightly worse, not a lot worse, but probably. I mean, I get this sense from an occasional data point that we are slightly 10% less good than we were 30 years ago. We're certainly not
Right.
improving, right? For all the talk of data and AI and everything else, and stacks and everything. When you see the occasional longitudinal data point, yeah, advertising is less effective than it used to be. You know what I mean? So I, I do think we've slipped a little, not too much, but we certainly haven't made a lot of progress. That's for sure.
Which is crazy, isn't it? When you think back to all the, the books that we're talking about, the good work from Ehrenberg Bass Institute, what Les Binette's been, Les and Peter in there, like you say,
Yeah.
in the long and the short of it. Yeah, it's crazy that you think we're regressing there.
Well, look, the knowledge is definitely more available. And I think that the way that it's been democratized out of universities and into books like How Brands Grow and talks from Les and Pete is brilliant, right? And if you're a bright, younger marketer, the knowledge is there to sort of piece together, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it. You know what I mean? And I'm always stunned by the proportion of marketers that A, have no real training in marketing, but B, don't know any of the people we've already mentioned. I mean, it sits around 70-75% in UK and in most countries, right? And so I think you can put, I mean, I'm bound to say this, but you can put a lot of it down to marketers that aren't trained in marketing and don't know that much about it. And it's unforgivable now, given A, they work in it, and B, so much of the knowledge is, democratized and available and super easy to consume.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In my introduction, I mentioned you've worked for many different global brands, including all the brands under the LVMH umbrella:
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton, Dom Perignon, Hennessy. What's the most surprising thing you've discovered when working with big brands during your career?
I mean, I think working with Sephora, which is an LVMH brand, I'd never worked in for a retailer in pretty much my whole career. And I'd worked sort of against them. And it was always like, why are these retailers such fuckers? Why are they obsessed with price? Why are they always squeezing us hard on supply price? And then you go over the top and work for a retailer for a couple of months, and you suddenly realize, oh shit, I get it now. Retailers are selling the same stuff to the same people at the same time in the same place. And their obsession with price is because over the road, in Sephora's case, there's Ulta, right? Ulta, which is their big competitor. They have pretty much 80% the same stock. They're in the same places. They're going after the same customers. So price becomes this golden lever. And it's just something I never thought of before until I actually went in and started seeing it from the retail point of view. So I remember
Mm,
that being a very big moment in realization.
yeah. Yeah, my focus in branding work as a market research agency, you're commissioned by larger brands, larger companies because they're so far removed from the marketplace. And one thing that hit me, it was B2B where I worked, so a lot of industrial companies, lots of large chemical companies on the branding research. But I just found that they felt that their strength was in their size, and their scale often. When really it was that was their downfall. They were acquiring brands, and some of these chemical companies, well, most of them over 100 different brands that they're managing. It's not surprising that they lost focus, with this misaligned brand
Yes.
values, and it's
Well, I
that's
mean,
what I saw.
and I think that's probably the commonality is you start working for a lot of these big companies, very successful companies, and just the abject lack of marketing capability is stunning, right? When you get
Yeah,
behind the front door and you see what's really going on, and when we were young marketers, you assume that X famous brand will have this incredible bunch of expert marketers who've got joysticks and they can control the perceptions of the market and all that. And then you get around the back of it and you're like, oh my God. Whenever you read all these relatively left leaning critics of advertising and branding, and they have this image of, we're all smoking cigars on the 50th floor, manipulating consumers with our dashboards. And it's like, mate, if you ever actually worked in a marketing team, you would be very disappointed in the abject lack of anything that's going on, right? We're not controlling the minds of children. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a million miles from that.
absolutely. I mean, I remember being. I remember, I still put Coca-Cola up there on a pedestal for some of the work that they
Yeah.
do. But I remember going in and running a workshop with a few of their teams there, and I remember being so disappointed. I had such high expectations, like you say, for these people that were going to appear around the table. This is not a big dig for Coca-Cola, but I mean, on that point, you'd think Coca-Cola and that consistency of brand. I remember as well, people back in the day, they had the business cards, so they all passed the business cards through to the front. And the differences from the business cards, even in terms of the brand and the look and the feel from Coca-Cola, it was crazy how there wasn't that consistency there. So
No, you're right.
whether it's B2B or large B2C, it's the same.
It is.
Talking of big brands and companies, my previous agency was bought by Dentsu, and before then I didn't really know the media world that well until it was 2018. I mean, I knew of the likes of Martin Sorrell and WPP, always in the news. But thinking of this whole media world today, they definitely seem to have lost their way, don't you think?
Yeah, they look really fucked on a couple of levels. Sorrel sent me a message last week. Actually, I shouldn't reveal what it is because it was probably meant to be private. It was very funny. I wrote a column about the new Cindy, the new CEO at WPP, and I just thought she was appalling. I'm not as a person, but the announcement she gave just seemed naively bad, right? I mean, I get the point. She has to, sort of send a shock through the company and alert shareholders that they're going to fix this and it's not been good enough. But I think she's missing the client point where the client's like, hang on a minute, I've got all my marketing comms money with you, and you're saying, we're not good enough. We've been a bit crap for the last few years, and we've been behind the times. I think it's going to hurt them really badly, and I think it was a very naive statement. And I looked at for the first time in a while. I looked into. You look at WPP's brand portfolio now. It ain't what you would have imagined. You know what I mean? In terms of closing down so many of those big prestigious brands. Now, maybe they had to do that, but you do feel like in times of great crisis and retraction, maybe having those brands would have been a little bit more useful, right? And I really think there is very big trouble ahead. And the other interesting part of all of this is, and I certainly can't explain it, publicists are absolutely fucking killing it.
Yeah, they are.
And everywhere in the world I go, they're killing it. And so you've got this. I mean, old Arthur Sadoun there obviously is a bit of a pocket genius. You get him on the program, right? He's one of the great business thinkers of the world. He seems to have stitched things up beautifully, and they just go from strength to strength while everyone else struggles. So, yeah, I think we're in for a hell of a 12 months, never mind 36 months with respect to these agencies. And I think that their reduction of brands in their portfolios is probably going to come back and haunt them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I read that article about Cindy Rose, and you're right, it was a bit of a car crash. And I think what was crazy was that she was, talking of AI was going to save the day, as if it was
Yeah,
this, new thing that, well,
yeah.
it's been
We've
around for
heard about
3
this
years.
AI
ChatGPT.
thing. We're going to have a look at this AI thing now because this seems to be quite interesting. And I'm thinking this is all not good. You know what I mean? And the other point was, I'm sure she's got the best will there, but she sat on their board for 5, 6 years already. She's part of it. She ain't she gave the speech like she'd come in to sort them out. She's been there for 6 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it looks to me like there's trouble ahead there. Big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not about creating these new adverts. It's about building brands. But speaking of new adverts, again, I was having my breakfast this morning, and I was reading your latest article on on the new Boss new ginger leather fragrance, whatever that is.
Ginger leather. Ginger leather.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think it's the worst ad of the year, of most years. I think. I mean, I wrote it as I've genuinely experienced it. Right, I've been traveling a lot, and I've been going through airports, and I've sort of been confronted by the shit that is the ginger leather campaign, boss meet boss, and it just got more and more strange. I mean, the final time I saw it in Melbourne, and I was just staring at this ad trying to work out what the fuck was going on. So I thought, no, I'm gonna. It was literally I was like, I'm gonna write about this. It's so bad, it's haunting.
It
And
really
then I'm
is.
writing for Adweek in the States now quite a lot. And what's delightful is, Adweek is a fountain of positive, upbeat, supportive marketing coverage. But I'm gradually turning Ryan, the editor, towards the dark side of fuck it, Ryan. Let's point out that this is shit, And he's like, yeah. And so it's the most shared article already today in Adweek in the States. And what's nice about it is, well, it's not nice, but it isn't Hugo Boss, to blame here. It's not their ad, I mean, one of the early things I've worked a lot for fashion brands. And what you discover very early on is there's usually a license deal with someone like Coty, and you've sold for 10 or 20 million euros a year the license. So they go off and make the perfume and have the brand name. And the interesting bit is they've usually got a much bigger media spend that you've got for the fashion brand, because this is perfume and cosmetics. So whatever you're doing in your little fashion world is being drowned out 6-1 by a bunch of people that you've never met and have a completely different vision for your brand. And frankly, have only got a 4 or 5 or 7 year contract. So they're going to milk that fucker for all it's worth, right? So, that's exactly what happened. And I've spoken with the Boss team and they're like, yeah, that wasn't us, mate. You know what I mean? And we're like, I know it wasn't you. And they're like, So it's there's more layers to that. But I would encourage the listener, first of all, to look at the ad on Adweek, where there's a nice big version of it in my column. But get out into the wild to an airport and really see the full majesty of shit that is that Boss campaign. I've never seen any. It's technically terrible. Like the photoshopping is, you and I could do better. The three celebrities look deeply uncomfortable with it, and the whole thing doesn't make any sense. The whole concept of these three arbitrary figures meeting around being a boss, it's just Euro shit. So I think Coty should apologize to Hugo Boss for being shit, and they should try and do better and not do that kind of thing anymore. Is where I'm at with this.
Well, I've seen it through magazines. I was traveling through JFK this week.
What did you think? I mean, before you saw the article, did it strike you, or did you just sort of go with it?
Well, it totally struck me because, first of all, I don't know, for maybe some of our American listeners and watchers, maybe they wouldn't know Vinicius Jr., for example, but Vinicius Jr. is a football player, plays for Real Madrid. So straight away, he caught my eye. And then I thought, well, hold on a minute. Why is he with Bradley Cooper? So I was looking at this after thinking, I just don't get that for starters. And then I didn't know who the other guy was, actually.
I didn't either, but he's the biggest sort of Latino star, right? But you've got a whole bunch of Colombians going, what the fuck is he doing with that American guy? Do you know what I mean? So they've tried to cover their bases by going after kind of everyone, but they've just confused everyone and putting them together in like what appears to be a virtual sort of cupboard somewhere. It just looks like what are those three guys doing in the darkness there? Do you know what I mean? The whole thing's
so. I mean, I was laughing. So it really did, it hit home to me when I saw that article pop up this morning on my LinkedIn feed. But no, the Vinicius Jr. Bradley and whoever that other guy is, and then I suppose it was the ginger leather that caught me, and straight away I'm thinking, what? Yeah. So there was so many questions.
Oh, we've got a special guest star. Hello, come on, you can come up and have a look. Yeah, this will be great for the audio listener. This is Ray Ritson.
Hi, Ray.
Hello, Ray. He likes to take my mouse. Yeah, but he's not going to have my mouse today. You want to say hello to the nice man, and then we'll get you off stage left. Thank you, darling.
Is that a Man United kit he's got
on there? Making a star appearance as well. Bye. The joys of children, mate. There you go. Start turn from the young Ray, the blonde-haired champion.
Was that a Manchester United kit he had on there?
No, it definitely wasn't. I want to make that very clear. It just happened to be a red and white top. It has no connections to the Red Devils at all.
Well, I mean, I suppose building on, we've just been talking about Cindy Rose, strong leadership, clear communication, then maybe that takes me on to Manchester United. I'm a Manchester United fan, so I've been living through this turmoil in recent years.
But dream, mate. It's been a long 10 years. Yeah?
Well, yeah, and that steady decline of what's been going on there. I suppose there's some synergies maybe between WPP and Man United in terms of those nostalgic synergies, at least. But the chaotic ownership, the decline of United. One thing that we've often talked about is brands, and Man United still has one of the most valuable sports brands in the
Yeah.
world, even though they've been run terribly for the last God knows how many years. So is this sheer legacy or proof that a terrible management can't always kill a strong brand?
No, I think it's the opposite. I mean, I've always made the point about Leeds United on a similar front. I mean, when Man United was successful or Liverpool are currently successful, people talk about how they're these giant brands, Real Madrid, but that's not a test of a brand because the product is very, very good at the moment and is inherently successful. To prove that you're a strong brand, you've got to do what Leeds United have done and what Man United is very, very, very quickly doing as well, which is win nothing, be terrible, and test the attendances and support over that period. I mean, if you remember, Leeds haven't really been in the top flight for almost a quarter of a century. You know what I mean? Until recently, but they were still getting top 10 attendances for the country, even though they weren't in the Premier League. So for me, that's the ultimate proof that Leeds is a special brand, and same with Man United. I mean, there'll always be that perception that United is a big special club. It could well be 10 or 20 years before they get back again. I would not be surprised, right? The Glazers are as bad as it gets in my book. So, but I think that the brand will stand the test of time and it will come back again. I mean, you're a wee bit younger than me, but I can remember going through that last period with Jimmy Greenough and the Greenough brothers and all that, and there was a terrible period where United went down and Dennis Law sent them down, and it's happened before, and United have come back. So yeah, they're a great brand. There just might be another 10 or 20 years of bad product until they get it right again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I suppose it shows the point of that a brand can provide that buffer and maybe not a golden shield, but a shield for some mismanagement over time at least.
Well, for sure, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we look at products through the rose tinted specs of brand equity, and we see something that maybe isn't there. Do you know what I mean? I'm a huge Boston Red Sox fan from my days in Boston, and for many, many years that was the case with the Red Sox. It was awful, but we didn't think it was awful because it was Fenway and it was the Red Sox, and there was, the curse was there, but we were going to get through it, and eventually, of course, the Red Sox got there. Not
Yeah,
not this season, mind you.
yeah. Well, we just need Roy Keane and Cantona to come in there. They'd ruffle a few feathers.
There you
Um,
go.
you once said most CMOs are useless, and I'm intrigued whether your views have changed or do you still think this is true?
No, it's true. I mean, it goes along with the. I mean, they're very nice people, but so's my dad. I wouldn't put him in charge of marketing at a large company. I think it goes on all this nonsense about the average CMO tenure is only 3.5 years. Average is the key word here, right? There's a bunch of terrible CMOs who really can't operate at the C-suite level, who are gone within a year or a bit, and there are lots and lots of examples of that. And there's some really good CMOs who are going a lot longer than 3 years. I mean, old Mark Pritchard's still. I was doing a P&G thing last week in Singapore. Mark Pritchard's into his second decade on the job. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a distribution, but there's a lot, unfortunately, of CMOs that aren't much C and aren't much M. Do you know what I mean? Like they really aren't built for it. But there are a few that give us hope, and I think I think we are in a place where that the good, smart CMO wins and builds growth, and that's not a bad thing. We don't want everyone to be good, right? We're fundamentally marketing is competitive and capitalist. We don't want everyone to be perfect. And people will say to me all the time, "Oh, you must be really depressed about the state of marketing." I'm like, no, it's great because the good marketers and the ones I'm training are spanking the market, right? We don't want everyone to be smart. I'm not interested in that. Do you know what I mean? What's the fun? If everyone was smart, you and I would be stupid. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's some good CMOs, there's some bad CMOs. To your earlier point about Coca-Cola, you just can't assume. You certainly can't assume that if you turn up and someone's the CMO of a very famous brand, that you're dealing with a marketing titan.
Yeah,
As often as not, you aren't. And it's kind of delightful when you discover they are pretty good and they do know their onions. I was working with a couple of them over the summer in the States, and it was kind of like, okay, like Colin Fleming at ServiceNow. You know what I mean? He's a
Yeah.
big CMO at a very big B2B company that said a lot of stuff. And so you sort of tentatively go, all right, here we go. But I was within about 10 minutes, you're like, oh no, he's fantastic, right? He's everything you would hope and more. So when that happens, you also feel pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for many, we've talked about it. Marketers were wandering around in the wilderness, but they've got all this information at their fingertips now. And well, for the viewers on the YouTube channel, you can see there's Field and Burnett books in the background, Ehrenberg Bass Institute, Byron Sharp, Jenny Romanuk. That Les has been a guest as well. So yeah, all very good, but. Yeah, I heard you talk about the fact that the problem with the groundbreaking research that Les and Peter did is that they chose the wrong title for their research. Can you explain why the long and the short of it should actually be called something else?
Yeah, it's really Orlando's point from System One. I mean, he's been saying it for years, and I never really understood what the hell he was talking about until finally the penny dropped. Um, if you read long and short literally, you think to yourself, well, obviously there's brand building that takes a long time to work, but has a big impact on brand and top of funnel eventually. And then there's the short of it and performance, which instantly starts driving sales and ROI. That latter part is true. If you spend money on performance marketing, you instantly, when you spend $1, an impact in the market. The minute you stop spending money, you instantly see it disappear, right? So that's short. That's the right word. Orlando's point, and one that I've finally got to myself, is if you look at all of System One's data, all of the campaigns which are extraordinarily good at long-term brand building are also, with almost without exception, really good at immediately selling product. So long delivers short. So then you start thinking, well, all right, so short's just short, but long is also short. So what's going on here? And the answer is it isn't long, it's either lasting or enduring or perennial, right? In the sense that
Yeah,
you run a great TV campaign, it's going to instantly start shifting product the next day, as well as long term changes in memory structures and so on that might last for years. So I think that's a genuine change in how we think about it. And I think it's a really important observation. Now, it's not the most, what would I say? It's not the most efficient or economical way to drive those short term sales. Obviously, more targeted stuff would be better. But nonetheless, this idea that we're going to do a long term brand building campaign and we're going to wait 18 months for it to have a big impact, that's also a nonsense. And I think that's crucial for the arguments ahead.
yeah, yeah, and it feeds into one of the best pieces of advice I read about was through John Dawes at Ehrenberg Bass Institute, the whole 95-5 rule. And I spoke to Jenny about that. And it feeds into that, doesn't it? In the fact I always use the example of my previous company was a market research company. But you can't sell market research to someone that's just not in the game to buy market research. So the
That's right.
95-5 rule, just to remind people, it's only 5% of market buyers are in market at any one time. So we used to, taking on those learnings, we used to spread our bread wide on the water and market to absolutely everyone, just because we never knew who would have that need for market research in the future.
No,
And
and that's it.
and
I use men and haircuts, right? I stay away from women and haircuts because it's a more complex thing, right? But if you stand outside on the high street offering free haircuts, 19 out of 20 men are interested, even if it's free, because they've had a haircut or they don't need a haircut, Um, and the point is the same, right? Approximately 5% of the market want it and 95% don't. And the key lesson from John Dawes' work is that it's usually too late to go after the 5% when they come into market. And what you're trying to do with the whole market, and 95% of them, is establish salience and a couple of key associations. So when they do enter the 5%, you're going to 70-80% of the time win the day. And once you
yeah,
understand that, to your point, you get why 60-70% of your budget needs to go on brand building, because there's 19 times more of them. And okay, we want to spend 40% of our budget targeting the 5% with product specific, bottom of the funnel conversion at work. I get it. That's where the money is right now. But equally importantly, I want to spend 60%, 70% of my budget on the 19 times as many consumers. So I'm ready for when they come in later on. And it really isn't that complicated. And, people say, how do we get the boardroom to understand this? And it's like, well, frankly, if they can't get it, there's something wrong with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's elementary, really, when you put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, marketers, whether they're managers, CMOs, sometimes struggle to prove that ROI to their peers. What
Yes.
do you feel are the metrics that truly matter for long-term brand health, and how these marketers can use them to defend their actions to the CFOs?
I mean, I think proving ROI out of the long term 95% stuff is very hard. Of course, it
Mm,
doesn't mean that it's not happening. And of course, in practice, what it means is if you do a really good job of brand building, it tends to show up as the 5%, 40% performance is working even better, right? So that I've worked for a big global sporting company where we got it right for a year, and then the pull of performance was so great because the brand stuff was making the performance stuff work even better. So for me, it's about acknowledging you can do your econometrics, and I think there's a very strong place for that to show what the right overall split might be. But week to week, year to year, the main thing is realizing if my job here is to build brand among the 100%, why don't we measure it that way? Maybe we can't put a direct ROI in it every time. But if I know I've generated salience or awareness in the market, if I know they think this and this, and those are the big triggers to purchase, I'm going to win when they come into the market. So I think for me, brand tracking is still when it's done well, the best evidence that we've invested well and it will pay back. Obviously, that's hard because there aren't immediate dollar figures attached. But
yeah.
we come back to those old cliches about just because you can't measure it doesn't mean that it isn't actually happening.
Yeah. Christmas is coming, Mark. I know it's different in the US. That it's all about Thanksgiving more so there, but here in the
Yeah,
UK, the battle of the Christmas adverts is coming. John Lewis, Coca-Cola, we talked about, and the big supermarket chains. And I'm not sure whether it's travelled to Australia. Probably not, but whether you've seen the most recent John Lewis advert. I grew up
I
in
have.
Manchester. Yeah, well, I grew up in the '90s with the dance scene, so
You're the
it touched.
dad. You're the dad in that, aren't you? Really, basically.
I'm definitely the dad in there, and it touched a nerve thinking of my son giving me a record player a record to reminisce and to play. I thought it was a good advert, but the refreshing thing I thought was, and again, you've written about this, the fact that Amazon didn't look to reinvent the wheel, and they've rerun their Joyride
Yes.
advert from a couple of years ago, and
Yes.
I thought it was, I really liked it. Stop recreating, reinventing the wheel. Stay with the winning formula.
Yeah. The metabolism of advertising is changing. We're realizing that not just at Christmas, but especially at Christmas, the same ad from previous years doesn't just work just as well; it works even better. The holidays is coming ad from Coca Cola is getting better and stronger in its sort of third decade of operation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So for me, it's a very important insight into not producing too much new work. And I spoke to the Amazon team last week in the States when I was writing the column about it, and yeah, the team there were very clear. There's 25 points of creative investment that we don't need to do that can go into working capital. That's nice. The team don't have to worry about a brand building ad. They can focus on all the other things they have to do because it's Christmas and they're Amazon. And they've got a winner, and it will be another winner this year. So I think it was a very strong choice. And I'm a big fan of John Lewis and a big fan of this year's ad too. But my question is, why not run some of your other ads as well? They'll perform even better. Do you know what I mean? People keep saying, "Oh, this is the best one they've done in a few years." I'm not sure if you didn't pull out some of them earlier ads, they wouldn't beat it in testing.
yeah,
And the point is, why not? You've got them in the bag; they're yours. You know what I mean? Use them. So, yeah, I think there's a genuine change in how we time and produce advertising. Less ads, more spent on them, more pre-testing, and then run much longer. The data that I've seen from Andrew Tyndall is clearly set around that 2 to 3 year mark when ads really start to kick in and get your full value for money. And that's a big challenge for an industry that wants to make a new campaign not every year but every season.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I've seen that. I've seen that this year with the Cadbury's, for example. I know they've definitely been running adverts that I saw in my youth, or
Yes,
a few years ago too. And actually, with that nostalgic rose tinted view, then I hark back to those good old days of being younger, and yeah, it hits you harder, doesn't it? Sometimes when you've seen that advert, so it
it
definitely works.
definitely does. It definitely does. And I think, you see companies like Coca-Cola, they've got the holidays are coming, but they still have to make an ad, which I find quite pathetic because they've got their AI ad, and that's kind of just like keeping them busy. It's like a kitten with a little ball. Oh, I've got to make an ad because that's what we do. Just run the big red truck and get out the way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
sorry, your job is not to make ads. It's you've got the champion there. Just plan it properly and enjoy it.
yeah. Well, I mean, Christmas really is silly season, and here in Manchester in the UK, we've had advent calendars and Christmas music in the shop since October. But we've talked about, oh, you touched a bit about it from your retailer experience, this whole slashing of prices in order to gain loyalty around the Christmas time. Again, have they not learned by now that this is not a strategy for success, or do they need to go down that route? Because, like you say, 80% of what they're selling is exactly the same in one supermarket to the next.
I think that's it, right? I think that the brands that supply them and then the retailers themselves press the red button of discounting because that's all they can think of, and it is a moment where when I'm training people on mini MBA, we go through the problems of discounting and why it's always a losing move. 98% of the time, it's a losing move. And then we look at, just do promotions by all means. You don't have to press the big red idiot button and take money off the top. Now, sometimes retailers are going to make you do that. Yeah, I'm not naive enough to believe that, a consumer goods brand can survive without any discounting at all. I mean, there's virtually no brands that can. Someone's going to make you discount and you're going to have to go along with it every now and again. I get that. But don't encourage it. And every time you sell your product on a non-recommended retail price basis, accept that you failed. Don't celebrate revenues that came in at 30% off because you've got a world of pain coming as a result of that, right? You probably aren't that profitable. You've commoditized your brand. You've pissed off all the customers that paid full price. You've pulled forward all of this demand that you now won't have in the next sector. And all the other distributors are now going to line up and say, right, well, that was great. It's my turn next. So it's in the litany of bad business decisions, running a price-based promotion, if you don't have to, is probably the most idiotic thing you could ever do.
Yeah, 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 and I think it's all about the framing of price as well. And in fact, Rory Sutherland was a guest talking about that, and I've got Richard Shotton coming up in a few episodes' time talking about the behavioural science of how to position price on that. So again,
Super important, right? I'm a huge fan of both those gentlemen, but I'm not that impressed with behavioral economics, right? I think a lot of it is hand trickery and largely tactical and pointless. It's all very counterintuitive and, oh, look over there, but really it's over here. A lot of it is wank, in my opinion. But in that area of pricing, I think it's genuinely an absolutely crucial point is understanding the framing and contextualization and communication of price. I've said it so often. I'm a broken record, but the way we communicate a price is more important than the price itself. And so, having those two talking on that topic, I think is brilliant. And I would encourage listeners to tune in because, for me, that's when it comes to pricing, too many marketers aren't involved in it, and that means we're not doing the research into it and we're not doing the communication about it, and
yeah,
that's a much bigger opportunity than creating good Christmas ads.
yeah, yeah. So we've talked. I've been one of the many thousands of students that have been through the doors of the mini MBA. I haven't done the brand management MBA, and that's purely because of
Shame on you.
time
Shame on you.
restraints. But I definitely will do it in the future, Mark, because I
Good
know it'll
man.
be a
Well,
great
I'll
course.
hold you to that, Nick. I'll hold you to that.
But is it because there's so many poorly educated marketeers out there that inspired you to create the mini MBA in the first instance?
I think that's partly the reason it's worked. Also, the relative uselessness of universities has helped too. Yeah, there's a couple of things. I mean, it was done because I started having children and I couldn't do consulting anymore. There isn't a lot of consulting in Australia, not the kind I do. And I'd been doing it for about 15 years since moving to Oz. And then once we started knocking out children, you can't just piss off for a couple of weeks to New York City. So
Yeah,
it started out with how am I going to make money, decent amounts of money without being able to leave Australia. But you're right. I mean, it came down to most marketers don't have a proper training in marketing, and on one side, but you couldn't blame them because there aren't many people that have got 100 grand and 2 years to go and do an MBA at LBS or INSEAD or Wharton to get that high level education.
yeah,
So my idea was, I won the teaching prize at MIT for my core marketing class. I've taught it for 25 years at top business schools. Why don't I offer good marketers a chance to do it in 12 weeks for a couple of grand and skip all the rest of it? And yeah,
yeah,
it's been 10 years and 40,000 marketers later, and we're still growing and pumping, and it's turned out to be a wonderful, surprising change in my career. I started out as an academic, then I became a consultant, and I've ended up as an entrepreneur, which is completely not what I was expecting. I've got a CEO now and investors and, a team and an office in London. And it's kind of like, wow, look at all this shit going on. We've got little lapel badges and things like that. So I find it very, very enjoyable. And it's God's work, obviously, right? We get marketers coming out of it. And it sounds obvious, but if you've worked in marketing, it's quite a senior class. It's guys like you. People have worked in marketing for 15 or 20 years and they've never been trained, and give them a good training and they go, hey, I now know what I already thought I knew. I've also learned 50% more about stuff I didn't know. I've joined it all together and I'm super capable and super confident, and watch me go. And people they get emotional about it at the end of the course, because what do if you work in marketing and you get a world-class training in marketing, life gets better like straight
yeah,
away. So yeah, it's been a lovely thing, and we've got many more years to go. We really have strong aspirations for growth. America's a big target now, and we're working very hard. So is Germany. So we work very hard now with the team at how we're going to do that, and that's where my focus is.
yeah. And it's good fun as well. It's
It is,
not
right? I
only
mean, if it's not fun, what's the fucking point? I mean, I'm always when I used to teach as a proper professor, people would say, oh, the thing that surprised me about the class was how enthusiastic you are and how much fun it was. And I'm thinking, what are these other guys doing in their classrooms? You know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
true. Look, if you can't have fun with it and have a chortle, it's 10 weeks of me, on a screen talking to the gang. If I can't make you laugh, then what is the point? We're all going to be dead soon. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
yeah, the single most common bit of feedback we get these days is we get to Christmas, the end of the 12 weeks, 10 weeks of class and 2 weeks of exam, and everyone's like, I'm going to miss this so badly when it ends. You know what I mean? And you're thinking, well, that's good feedback. We're
yeah,
happy with that.
yeah. Well, you just said you're maybe an accidental entrepreneur, but would you have any advice to give out to would-be entrepreneurs or startups trying to make a meaningful impact with their business launches today?
I mean, there's a couple of things, right? Only have one brand. Don't start creating a stable of brands and spread yourself too thin. Don't worry too much about positioning it precisely at the beginning. It will move around a little bit like my kid there. My lad. We had all these plans for how he's going to be, and once he pops out, he has his own plans. Brands are like that when they start out; they move around. Give them latitude. Um, And look, the last thing is, I think I was relatively old and relatively wise when we started it. It takes a big bite out of your life, so be ready for that. I worry about a lot of entrepreneurs. It sucks everything out of them, and the definition of an entrepreneur is, you're going to take risks, too many risks. Um, it's not all it's cracked up to be. You know what I mean? I think it can be at the end. I certainly feel great about it now, but it's a punishing. It's different from working 9 to 5. Do you know what I mean? And
It
that's
really is. You live and breathe it all the time, don't you? And
there isn't
yeah,
much escape from it, right? So I think be aware of that too. But yeah, you get to be your own guy and your own woman and do your own thing. But at some point, of course, what happens is other people enter the room. I mean, I've tried to do it very sort of, in my own special. I'll just do it myself. I'll do everything myself. But of course, with a little bit of scale and growth and money, people sort of emerge from different rooms, and you find yourself sometimes in meetings. You're the one, everyone else is talking about stuff, and you're sort of sitting there looking out the window, going, yeah, it's sort of going off on its own now. Do you know what I mean? Which is not a bad feeling either. I
yeah,
guess that's when you feel like it's properly become something.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
look, I'm super delighted with it. It's made a fuck ton of money. But even with that, with money and growth and investors comes, I think an important point is that growth comes with a gigantic. We're all obsessed with growth, and growth is overrated. Yeah, growth brings problems, in my experience too. And at one point, I had a really naive dream about us just getting a baseline of sales each year and being happy with that, and keep the sales the same and just focus on getting the NPS higher and higher and higher. It's just nonsense talk, right? There'll always be money flowing in and expectations of growth. You can't
yeah.
you can't escape the capitalist monkey. You know what I mean? He's always on your back.
Well, as long as you're keeping that balance there, Mark, and then that's
Yeah, look,
that's the
there's
main
worse.
thing.
It's not coal mining. Do you know what I mean? I mean that's the point. I coming from
Yeah.
all my grandfathers were coal miners, and it ain't going down the pit. Let me put it that way. Do you know what I mean? It ain't that fucking hard. You know what I mean? Flying to Singapore business class and having people kiss your ass for an afternoon, it ain't going down the pit with ponies. You know what I'm saying?
Right, to finish off, Mark, I've got a usual
Mm.
bank of questions I ask all my guests.
Yes.
My last guest was Amy Gallo. She's a workplace expert, helps people with effective communication. She maybe should have helped Cindy Rose before, but she helps deal with interpersonal dynamics, difficult conversations, and how to get and give effective feedback. And her question to you is, marketing is all about how you can get people to follow and love your brand, but what role does friction and conflict play in developing world-class marketing?
Oh, I think it's very important. I think you come to learn at a certain point when you're positioning a brand that sometimes words that don't quite sit together uh, provide the energy for the brand. I mean, ginger and leather is obviously going too far. But if you look at, when I worked on Dom Perignon, the friction between power and playfulness, which is right at the core of Dom Perignon, if you study its history and customers and it creates something marvelous when you have a little bit of tension there. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I think, yeah, I really think friction is something we need. And I think in America that's what they're missing at the moment. They're kind of so polarized, they stay in their own camps, and everyone's afraid to have friction. And friction can be a very positive thing as long as it's done with good grace and and a little bit of understanding. I think telling someone they're wrong, but also thinking you may not be correct is, I think, a fundamentally healthy thing, and we need more of it. We need more uncertainty and more friction. What we don't need is two different groups of people who both think they're right.
yeah,
We're in a bad place because of it. So yeah, love me a bit of friction. If I don't have friction in my columns, and you do, mossify after a while. So you sort of you start writing more and more pleasant stuff if you're not careful. You sort of take yourself aside, or I know I do. And I go, "Oh, that's fucking, that's not. Let's write one that everyone complains about. Let's look for friction, because if it's always going to be smooth and expected, then At the end of, and my favorite experiences, it's just happened to me today. I'm going up to Brisbane to give a talk for a client, and they're like, "Well, no, we want you to be you, Mark, and we want you to do what you do." And then when I do that, normally what happens is after the client goes, "That was a bit strong, that was a bit much." And I'm like, "Right, yeah, okay, well, that's what you wanted. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Friction is good. Friction is good.
Yeah. Um, Next couple of questions from the listeners. So, firstly, from Roland Talahatu, hope I pronounced that wrong, from Jakarta in Indonesia. And he asks, what will be the most important things for marketers and brands to master in order to survive in the next 5 to 10 years?
The obvious but correct answer is being agile enough to work out how they're going to manage with AI. It's not going to be straight away, and it's not going to just knock out all the humans, but it is a significant paradigmatic force. In my twilight years of being a marketing professor, I worked quite a lot in this space, and it's clear to me that my first 25 years of teaching was training marketers to build marketing plans. It's going to be very not immediate, but very soon that we will be able to create incredibly advanced marketing plans from synthetic data beyond anything humans can produce. What's my role in that? Well, now the plan is already there. My role becomes the reverse, which is explaining to marketers what the hell this plan means. You see what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
still a role for me, but it's a different role in a different place than before. And I think that's what each and every marketer is going to have to do, is find a slightly different place in the world, because AI is that big and will have that impact, I feel.
Yeah. Well, I had John and Peter on
John and Peter,
last year talking about
couple of
synthetic.
couple of idiots. Don't listen to a word of it. I could
um,
listen when I could tell you some stories about those two that would make you. Here's one story I can tell you, right, Nick. So the 95.5 rule is down to John Lombardo, right?
right.
So they flew in from the US with various amounts of prescription medication in their system and came straight down to Tasmania to visit me. And we went on what can only be described as a massive bender in Tasmania. And then John, who's just an athlete, went off to Ehrenberg Bass to talk to John Dawes and the rest of them. And me and Pete literally dropped him off at the airport at Hobart, and we had to sleep in the car. That's how messed up we were, right? John goes at 6 a.m. in the morning to Adelaide, spends the day with Ehrenberg Bass, and it's at that point that John Dawes in conversation says, and of course we know that about 95% of the consumers are not in market right now, blah, blah, blah. And John Lombardo goes, wait, say that again, right? So it's John Dawes' idea and thinking for
Right.
sure, but Lombardo plays a role in all of that, right? So yeah, they're a couple of lunatics, mate, a couple of
Yeah.
lunatics.
I didn't know that. So, thanks to John Lombardo as well as John Dawes there, and
Absolutely
for
right.
for getting up that morning and making the trek.
Superhuman,
Um,
man.
the next question is from Gareth Reeve in Sheffield, who asks, B2B branding often defaults to bland thought leadership. Who's doing it right in Mark's eyes, and what can others learn from them?
Look, not many. I mean, it's. There's a couple of things there. Again, I've been working a bit with. I've got a big posse from Service now working on Mini MBA at the moment, and I think their work on customer portraits and getting the buying center properly understood is pretty impressive stuff, I have to say. Salesforce pretty good on distinctiveness. I think you'd highlight them for what they've done there. Um, but generally speaking, it's not a great space. My advice to everyone who works in B2B marketing is don't worry about it being B2B marketing. The minute we split it up and go, well, there's B2B and then there's B2C, we make it a huge error, because what we're basically assuming is that B2C group, that's kind of uniform. And in there, you've got, trombones, aftershave, insurance, banking, sex toys, you name it, it's all in there. They're all different. So really what we're saying is everything is different, and B2B can learn just as much from B2C as it can from other B2B cases. So I wouldn't even look at the B2B universe separately. I would say
Yeah.
just take the stuff. What have you learned from the B2B Institute at LinkedIn? The stuff from B2C works even better in B2B. So yeah, I would say don't worry about it. It's not that strong, but we're all part of the same universe.
Well, I'd vouch for that, and therefore it's a bigger opportunity, isn't it? Because no one's really
Super big,
doing it well. So
super big. And I
yeah,
would always take a B2B marketer for a B2C job for that reason, right?
yeah, yeah. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever been given?
Focus on profitability. Gilles
Yeah,
Hennessy, who I work with in a very frightening, distant way, was always very keen on stressing that revenues were not of any interest unless you knew what the margin figure was behind it. And I think that remains a very important piece of advice. If you follow profit, you'll go pretty much down the right place. If you follow revenues, it invariably takes you to the wrong place. So yeah,
yeah,
the only reason we like revenues is they're the carrier drug for profit. Other than that, they're going to tell you to have too many products, too many brands, too many sales promotions, too many staff, too many sales heads, too many wholesalers. It'll send you the wrong way, and it usually does. So yeah, follow the money, and I mean profit, not revenue.
yeah. And who would you like me to
And
reach out
incidentally,
to?
by the way, Nick, incidentally, when we were working on mini MBA and private equity was sniffing around us and everything, everyone goes on about recurring revenue streams and all that. And I said, we don't have any of that. We don't sign anyone up for multi-year deals. And they were sort of all sniffy. And then I showed them our operating margins, and they were like, "Oh, hang on, this is amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, it is, because we don't, we just because we don't do it your way doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing." You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, profitability is it's sneered at a lot, but trust me, when you get into those meetings and you can show always being consistent on revs and always having really good profit margin, the conversation changes real quick.
we had similar conversations actually. I mean, as a market research agency, most of it was ad hoc. We had a few brand trackers, but exactly that. If you're successful and you can make the profit, then yeah, not to be sniffed at. Um, who would you like to hear on this podcast in the future? Who can I reach out to?
Who would I like to hear from more than I haven't heard already? I mean, there's a strong cast of usual suspects. I really would like you to get. I mean, it could be Grace Kite, but Grace is probably more broad than this now. But someone that can really speak to econometrics and the practical role of econometrics and what it can and can't do. I think it's an area where we drop it very frequently in the conversation without actually being specific enough. So I'd suggest, yes, someone from a decent econometric firm that can speak in English would be great.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll follow that up definitely. Um, and finally, my next guest is Will Butler Adams. It was going to be Gary, but Gary's
Yes,
coming in January. So Will Butler Adams, British businessman, CEO of Brompton Bicycle, who are better known for manufacturing the revolutionary folding bicycle, and definitely played a significant role in he has in the growth and development of Brompton as a leading brand in engineering and design.
yes.
So what would you like to ask Will?
I would ask Will a question I've never got a straight answer from anyone in his sector, which is how important is it to manufacture the product in the UK, in its country of origin, or is it more important to be competitive and consistent to the brand by having it manufactured elsewhere?
Yeah. And do you know where they manufacture it? Do they always
I,
manufacture in the UK still?
I don't know. I'll bet you he won't like the question, because I suspect no one's making bikes in the UK anymore
Yeah.
exclusively, right? But
Yeah.
I understand why. I mean, Burberry moved most of their stuff overseas for that reason. Even Louis Vuitton, who were made in France as part of their DNA, just couldn't make enough good shoes in France and had to find other places. So it's an interesting, do you diminish your quality by maintaining your source of origin? I'd really be interested what his point of view is, especially
Yeah.
when it's the UK and a notorious, shithouse economy and manufacturing sector now compared to how it once was.
Yeah. Great question. Well, I will ask that, Mark. As always, Mark, you never fail to educate, you never fail to enlighten, you never fail to make me laugh. So I think I need to thank you for everything you've done. Mini MBA, coming on the show itself. I think in terms of what I always learn from you, well, the principles of great marketing stay the same, whether it's B2B or B2C. We've just talked about that. Um, that whole key of being consistent with your brand. We haven't really touched on distinctive brand assets, but we all know how important that is. And I suppose definitely don't use price slashing to cut through the marketing quick wins. But brand building is definitely a long game. Is there anything else you'd like to add to our listeners that we haven't covered?
No, but I'd like to finish, Nick, if you don't mind. Feyerabend, the famous postmodern thinker, used to end his classes at the Sorbonne by jumping out of a window, landing on a motorbike, and driving off into the distance. If you'll indulge me, given I'm in my spare room, what I'd like to do to end the podcast is climb into my bed and go to sleep. And then I'd like you to say, "Good night, Mark," and turn it off. Can we do that?
Let's do that.
Right, mate. Right. Now, and you'll find out if I've got any pants on now. This is the exciting moment of the podcast, right? Oh, yeah. All right, Nick, I'm ready, mate, when you are.
Okay, well, there you have it, listeners. Thanks for Mark today. And that well-rested sleep needs to come. So have a good sleep, Mark.
Good night, Nick. Thanks for tucking me in, mate. Appreciate it.
Night. So much to unpack from this podcast. So here are my notes upon reflection of what you've just heard. The key learning I thought was that Mark wasn't sat there in his underpants, which you will have seen if you watched the YouTube episode. Now, joking aside, there was so much to learn from this podcast. Firstly, as a marketeer, don't obsess over advertising and promotion. Brand building is the ultimate goal, and so look to take hold of the other 3 Ps, and especially price, because as the saying goes, revenue is for vanity and profits for sanity. Profit is crucial for your business to not only survive but thrive. So even if you can't influence the final price, make sure you're sat around the table to listen and contribute towards those discussions, because Mark says the way price is communicated is more important than the price itself. Secondly, it's the misconception that with brand building it takes a long time, and actually a good campaign can help in both the short term and the long term, although the optimum is definitely to split the budget to look at both. Therefore, brand trackers are a really important tool in the marketing toolbox to measure how well your marketing efforts are delivering over time. And it will also give you a lot of evidence to share with your peers who may ask about the ROI of your marketing campaigns. Finally, marketers spend weeks or months, thousands of marketing dollars creating new adverts when they really don't need to. Data on effectiveness and longevity suggests many campaigns could and probably should run for years, so save time and money and run with your existing creative. I hope you loved this podcast as much as I did. Next up is Will Butler-Adams. He's talking about his journey on starting and growing Brompton Bicycles. So stay tuned for that one. Thank you.